So unschooling really is becoming more popular. But in that, there's also more and more questions about it, particularly how do you do it? Okay. Because we're moving away from that traditional approach of using textbooks or a curriculum and following that. It really is a child-led approach, and it really can be wonderful for you and your family. Sometimes I get those questions of well, how do we do this? How do we do that? And, we might have a better idea about some of it math or maybe language arts, but what about when we get to something like social studies? Hi, and welcome to Learning Life, and thank you so much for joining me today as we look at unschooling social studies. How do we do it? I love so much about unschooling and what it really can mean for our children's education. Now, do I agree that it's for everybody? No, and that's great because I'm you do what works for you. That's my philosophy on education and on family, do what works for you. But, when it comes to unschooling, I can see why people are being more and more drawn to it with this child-led approach, with taking those interests and just moving learning away from a set time and a sort of set approach. And so, I've done actually some videos on unschooling, language arts and math and science. Those links are down below. And now I just want to look at social studies. So much that we can learn there in social studies. It covers things like history, geography, the cultures of other people, that even things like government and civics and economics. It really is an all-encompassing, and we generally break down social studies into little smaller topics, but we really can learn it together. Now, I learned it as social studies when I was in primary or elementary school, and when I was in teachers' college, they started calling it human society and its environment. And I get it, but that was a mouthful. We just called it HUSI. But, really, this is what it is. That we're looking at the world and at human society and all of these different things. Now, before we move on, I just want to say thank you so much for watching these videos and for your likes and subscribes and your comments and being part of this learning life. Now, would you agree that social studies is important for children to learn? Yes, thank you. It really is. Ultimately, it's helping our children and us understand, the world that we live in. Its past, the present and the future. We're making those connections between individuals to communities to the larger global society. And this is great. And what's great when we're unschooling it is we don't have to follow a set pattern and even an order on what we learn, how we learn it, and when. We're not saying first grade is this, second grade is this, third grade is this. We can follow our children's interests. And that is one of the things that I really love. And if we're not always breaking it down into history, geography, this, that, then we can incorporate it all together, really follow those interests and see how it all works together. Ways to unschool social studies. Well, really the first thing, because this is unschooling, follow your child's interests. Let's pay attention to what they're curious about, and build on those interests. Let's say, for example, they're fascinated right now with ancient Egypt. Okay, let's learn about ancient Egypt. There's books that we can do, the read through. There's documentaries. There's other things that we can be using to explore that topic. They're interested in it. We want to follow that regardless of what other curriculums say when we should be learning something. Let's encourage real-world experiences. Because social studies is not limited to textbooks. Look, textbooks can be great and it can open up doors to new information. But what we really want to do is encourage our children to engage in real-world experiences, okay? We want to provide practical understanding and ways that we could be doing this, visiting museums, love museums. Like historical sites, like we have a number around where we live and we can go and see and learn. Cultural festivals. Like, don't think that you can't go to these cultural festivals. Let's go and learn and ask questions. Let's invite, do you know somebody that has a different cultural background, come from a different country, do things differently? Invite them in to share their stories. Okay, this is like really important. I have found that from travel, and that's another great way of getting those real world experiences of just sitting with people and talking about what they do and why is actually really key to go, oh, this is why they think this is why they do that. And that can help for me to shape my thinking and maybe like widen my perceptions, which is always great. We want to utilize online resources. There are some great online resources out there. There are educational websites. There are videos that can really support, because if we've got this interest, let's go and find it. Like National Geographic Kids is a great one, like history.com. And what I love is how many like virtual field trips you can get out there, like online. I mean, such great like learning opportunities. Like we have looked at ones that have like connected like at zoos or like under the ocean. Those ones are great. There are even like virtual tours of like working farms and seeing like what they're doing there. Like this is great. And I love like the historical ones where you can almost get like these 3D 360 views around seeing things. Like let's really use our online resources. But also, let's not forget to incorporate literature, okay? Books, literature, a great way to really explore it. There is some great, like, age-appropriate historical fiction out there. Don't be afraid of historical fiction. There's biographies, like cultural stories. I think of, like, the Australian Aboriginals, and they have the dream time, like all the stories that explain how things were made and, like, the world began. And there's some great picture books that really explain that. Like, I think that that's wonderful that we can read that. It's really going to, like, pique interest in, like, various topics. And again, it doesn't just have to be like history or geography, but understanding like cultures. I love that there are more and more books coming out explaining, as picture books, a child's perspective on the different culture of how they're being raised. Let's really make the most of books. Let's encourage critical thinking. And discussions. I love critical thinking. Okay, we want our children to be thinking about things like current events, social justice issues, like even like historical events and what we can be learning from them. Okay, look, I'm not a huge person about the news. It's not really like my favorite thing to watch because it can bum me out. But there are things like if it's a big issue, we're quite willing to discuss that, like with our girls. Like we just think, yeah, they need to be knowing this, especially like social justice issues. We want to talk with them about it in an age-appropriate way and getting, like them to think critically, asking questions, sharing their opinions. Now, of course, like our younger children are going to present opinions that might be like out there, maybe even our older children, but this is a great way to then we can reflect back and, and get them to really be thinking, because don't we want them to have a deeper understanding of these concepts and how they relate to the world? No, critical thinking is so important, but in so many of our topics that hit under social studies, it is vital that our children know how to critically think and ask good questions and really develop good opinions. Let's use hands-on projects. Okay, great way of really like learning, especially great for our kinesthetic learners. What is something that we're doing? Let's thinking back to ancient Egypt. Maybe we create a timeline of the historical events there. Like looking at like the scientific discoveries that they came up with, building a model like of a famous landmark. Like you could build like one of the Great Pyramids there. Like I remember doing ancient Egypt with students and we used Play-Doh like to make mummies and like we made sarcophagus and all of that, role play historical figures. I mean, get your children to put on a play about what they've been learning, because these activities help like make social studies come alive. And again, which is what we want to deepen like that understanding, and getting them involved in creative things and hands-on things is really going to help with that. Let's also embrace community involvement. Okay, so let's encourage our children to get involved in like community activities. Maybe you could volunteer together at like a local shelter or like even historical society so that you can be learning, like going to those cultural festivals and all of that, or maybe community service projects. I know for us at home, like as we've been talking about some of the social justice issues, that my girls are like starting to think, well, what if we did this? Could we maybe do this with our friends, like to help them? I love that they're gaining like this connection to their community. They're getting this broader understanding. They don't necessarily know that this is all social studies, but they're thinking it through. And, if they can be connecting to the community, they can be connecting the different things like here in their local area. When we travel, that's also going to be great because they're going to see people do things differently, that, their life might look very different and, they can be making those connections. And I love that. So let's remember that unschooling social studies, it's about like fostering a love of learning and allowing our children to explore, discover like these social concepts. That's what social studies is. And that they can be doing that at their own pace. They're doing it with their own interests. And when we have those interests and we're following that, we're going to be learning the skills that we need. And to me, that is like the most important thing. So be responsive like to their needs, being responsive to age-appropriate discussions or materials that you're going to be using. And also like be open to adapting your approach as you go along. This is really something like with unschooling, especially as our children's personalities or learning styles like come into play. But this is also one of the beauties of unschooling. Do you unschool like social studies? I would love if you have like some ideas, share them below, because I always like love learning and seeing like what other people are doing in this area, because like, maybe I could be doing that too. And now I want to announce the winner of our 5 in a row giveaway. Thank you everybody for your comments. Let's find out who is going to win a volume of choice from 5 in a row. And the winner is Arrow Hill Cottage. Congratulations. I'll be in touch with you to make sure that you can get the volume of your choice. Well, thank you for entering, and we look forward to next month's giveaway. Well, thank you so much for watching today. Thank you for being part of this learning life. And a great way of being involved is to help get these videos out, because you know what? I want people to be like learning and, just growing in their journey on this too. And you can do that by being a champion. So you can check that out at patreon.com or at my website, LearningThis.Life.